Hi, welcome back. My name is Felicia. I'm a knitter, crocheter, and overall fiber enthusiast living in Washington, D.C. And this is my little corner of the internet where I share all of my little crafty endeavors, mostly knitting, but I'm hoping that this year I'll have some other new things that I can share with you all. So if this is your first time tuning into my channel, thank you so much for taking time to watch my video. And if you're a returning viewer, thank you so much for coming back. And I have a lot of really exciting things to share, so let's get into it because I don't want this video to be too long, which it might be, but I'm hoping that it won't be. So I did try recording this video earlier this week and I just didn't like it. So I decided to try again, and it ended up working out because I got a lot of really exciting things in the mail to share. So I'm excited to share those things as well. But before I get started sharing all of the things, I just want to wish everybody a happy new year. I hope that 2022 is treating you right and that you are having a much better year than last year. It has been a long 2022 already, and I'm so grateful that I have knitting to turn to as a form of stress relief and relaxation and as a part of my self-care. And I know that a lot of people have other things that they rely on to make themselves feel whole and healthy and centered, but I just can't imagine what my life would be like right now without knitting. And so I'm so grateful to have knitting and so grateful to have this platform to be able to share what I'm knitting, just because I don't have really anybody in my personal life who is as passionate about fiber arts as I am. I don't know any other knitters or crocheters or anything like that. So it's really nice to be able to have this platform to share the thing that I really love and that really brings me a lot of joy. So I just wanted to share that really quickly, and let's get started. Before I get into my works in progress, I did want to talk about what I'm wearing. This is the Bright Sweater by Junko Okamoto. I've talked about it on a couple of my last few episodes of the podcast, so I will link those if you want to hear more about the yarn and the experience that I had knitting it. But I absolutely love this sweater. It's a little scratchy. I describe it as being tactile because it is a much more rustic yarn, but I can wear it next to skin. I'm just I am really aware that it is there. It doesn't feel like cashmere, it doesn't feel super soft, but it's not uncomfortable to wear. And I've worn it a few times and I love it. I get so many compliments every time I wear it. I absolutely love this sweater. It's beautiful to wear and it's a really great experience to knit, which I think is something that I'm going to talk about a little bit later when I talk about my 2022 crafting goals. But that is the ideal project for me, something that is fun to knit and I can enjoy the process of knitting it, but is also something that I really love to wear and I'm able to get a lot of use out of. And this sweater is that for me. So I think I talked about it on the last episode, but if I had it to do different, I did modify the neckline. I did a folded over hem instead of a rolled hem as called for in the pattern. And if I had it to do all over again, I would do the neckline on a smaller needle, but I don't mind that it kind of sits away from my neck. It's probably for the best, just because I think my neck would be really hot and itchy if I had it too close. But that's something aesthetically that I would change about this pattern. Otherwise, it's perfect, and I did knit it in the recommended yarn. I will have the pattern, the yarn, and a video if you want to hear more about my experience knitting this, all linked below. The other thing is that I have people ask me this in the comment section, so I just wanted to clarify that everything that I talk about on this episode will be linked below. If I do forget to link something, please let me know. It's not my intention, but I do try to link all of the things that I talk about, and sometimes I talk about so many things that I do forget to link things, but everything will be linked below, including where you can find me on social media and Ravelry. All of those links will be down below. Okay, so I'm gonna quickly talk about my whips. I don't have any finished objects, and you will see why, or maybe hear why in just a moment, but I'm gonna quickly go through my whips. Right now I have 3 active whips that I'm working on, 2 of which you've seen before, and 1 I can't fully show you. So yeah. So my first whip is my half and half triangles wrap. I started working on these last year as part of the Caddy Jacks Knits knit along for the half and half wraps. I completed 2 of them last year. I did a blue on blue one. It was dark denim and gray denim, I think are the colors. And then I did one for my mom as a Christmas present, and she absolutely loved it. The blue one and this one are the large version. So I think these are 260 stitches, if I'm not mistaken. Let me look at the pattern. Yeah, 260 stitches. And I am doing this one in Kiln Red, which is this dark red here. And then this is Poppy. And I put this on the back burner towards the end of last year for another one of my whips. And what I will say about the half and half wrap is it is a slog. It's a lot of stitches. You have to knit every stitch. It's short rows. And it is a really relaxing, like mindless knit. Last night I put on Ozark and was just like knitting through this, and it was perfect for TV watching. But I have been focusing on a couple of other whips, so I haven't taken as much time to really focus on this one. And I think that's okay. I'm not in a rush to finish this at this point, and I have a goal of getting this done before next fall. So this will just be a slow and steady whip, something that I can turn back to while I'm watching TV, if I have meetings at work where I don't have to present, or I'm not, responsible for taking notes or doing something else, I can work on this. It just has been on the back burner for a little bit because I've been working on other projects, but I still really, really love the half and half triangles wrap. I don't know, I will probably cast on one more this year, but what I have found with the half and half triangles wrap is that I have to be really attracted to the colors. So I have to really want to knit the pairing together to want to knit it. And I don't have a color pairing that I'm really drawn to. I would love to do one that's neon with like a neutral nude color and then a pop of neon. But the pops of neon that they have on the Purl Soho site are not the colors that I'm drawn to. I don't think I said, but this is the linen quill, which is the yarn that's called for. And this is a free pattern. So I will have the yarn and the pattern linked below. And this is living in my Plystra project pouch, which I love. I'm obsessed with these project bags. They're just really chic and they fit a ton of yarn in them. So this is like technically a 6 skein project, and all of it fits in this bag. So you could definitely fit a sweater in here. My second whip, I have a lot of progress to share on this, and I'm really excited. So I talked about on the last episode that I really wanted to knit the Foxthoughts sweater by Hiroko Payne. And I ordered a kit off of Bien Aimee, and I'm knitting, I'm doing a few modifications. And since then, let's see. Kind of tangled up. Hold on. Oh no. Okay. Oh, that was so long. Okay, this is how far I've gotten. So I have a lot to share about this project. Let me bring it in a little closer so you can see. So I think the last time I shared this project, I had barely started the color work chart. And as you can tell, I have finished the color work chart. You probably can't see it here. I finished the body, and now I'm on the ribbing. And this is a lifeline, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But I want to just share what I did in some of the modifications. So the first thing so I'm doing the high neck pullover version. There's a couple of different neckline options, and you can do a pullover or you can do a cardigan. I'm doing the pullover. I'm doing the cover version. So the main body color, this color right here, is called Undergrowth. And then I did and I always call it the wrong thing. I think it's called the Pom Pom Fluo kit for the color work portion. So on the last episode, I talked about how I didn't love where the arm split happens. So in the original pattern, you split for the sleeves after the color work chart. So in the original version, I would knit to here and then split for sleeves. I have a larger like bust chest circumference, and I just felt like that would be a lot of material and fabric just like right along my bust. And I already would be having this super bright neon color like flat across my chest. So I wanted to split for sleeves early. I did follow kind of the way that Jackie from Caddy Jack's Knits did her split for sleeves, and I actually messaged her on Instagram to just get a little insight into how she split for sleeves. So I still did it a little differently though. So what I ended up doing is I split for sleeves, I believe in row 31 or 32 of the second color work chart. So this is a color work chart here, and then this part is another color work chart. So what I did was, for my size, I'm knitting the size 4. And I'm trying to think of the best way to explain this without confusing people. But so I knit the size 4, and what I did was I counted the number of repeats, pattern repeats that were on my needles at the time. I don't remember the exact number, but I counted the number of repeats. And then when I got to the underarm sleeve, or the underarm portion, the part where I would need to split for sleeves, I looked at how many stitches I would be putting on hold and how many stitches I would need to pick up, because sometimes that number is different. So I put a ton of stitches on hold, and then how many stitches do I need to cast on? And what I realized is that for my size, if I started the part of the sleeves that goes on hold in the middle of the chart repeat and ended it in the middle of a chart repeat, that I could cast on the number of stitches that would be needed to continue the stitch repeat, if that makes sense. So for example, I was losing, and this could be inaccurate, but I was losing, let's say 4 stitches from each half of the pattern, and then I just cast on 8 stitches. So what that allowed to happen, if you can tell here on the underarm, is that the pattern continues seamlessly. So I was able to continue the underarm pattern without there being half a pattern or anything like that. Like it just evenly goes between the stitch pattern repeat, if that makes sense. Under the sleeves, it was a little bit of a different situation. So there is kind of a little bit of a fading here, where it's not quite a whole stitch repeat, but you can't really tell, and it's under the arm. And I figured you probably wouldn't see this section either, but you definitely wouldn't see the part under the arm. So I wanted, if there was gonna be anything wonky with the color work, sorry, I was just checking. I thought it stopped recording. If there was gonna be anything wonky with the color work, I wanted it to be under the arm and not necessarily on the body portion of the sweater. So I did that, and I put this in timeout for like a week because I knew that I was gonna have to do knitting math, and I'm not a math kind of girl. So I was not like emotionally, mentally prepared to do knitting math, but I did it on a day where I had nothing but time. And I just like really concentrated, and I planned it out and I thought it out, and it worked out perfectly, and I'm so happy. The other thing that I did, what I had noticed on some people's Ravelry pages who have done this pattern, is that if they split for sleeves early, there was this line of demarcation under the sleeve where they cast on the underarm stitches in one color. And I didn't want that. I wanted it to be as seamless as possible. So what I did is I would think of it like a long tail cast on, or it was technically a backwards loop cast on. So I did a backward loop cast on, but when I cast on the stitches, I cast them on in pattern. So I followed the color work chart, and if it needed color A, if it needed 2 of color A, I did 2 of color A, 1 of color B, such and such and so on. So I did that under the arm, and I think it turned out really nicely. I do have a little bit of some holes right here from where I picked up. That's normal. I left long enough tails in the colors that I cast on, and I will just kind of go in and tighten up those holes under there. I get those all the time when I pick up sleeves, and so I always leave a little extra yarn and just go in and duplicate stitch over those stitches. So it's obvious to me. It's probably not obvious to anyone else, but I know that it's there. Okay, so the next modification that I did after that is I shortened the body. So in the original pattern, show you, see if you can see. In the original pattern, the body of the sweater, see if you can see it better here. Yeah, the body is pretty long, and I decided that I wanted it to be cropped in kind of a bubble fit. So I just kept trying it on until I liked where it was, and then I approximated for the 2 inches of ribbing that I'm going to be doing until I got the length that I wanted. So I didn't knit it to the length of the schematic in the pattern. I just knit it to what I wanted it to be, less those 2 inches of ribbing. And then I did 2 decrease rounds. So I decreased, knit around, decreased, knit around, and then now I am doing a twisted rib, a 1x1 twisted rib. So I'm a little nervous that I decreased way too much to be able to like fit it over my person, especially over my bust, because my bust area is wider than my waist area. So what I decided last night that I'm going to do is another modification. I like the way that it fits and that it sits and the way that it bubbles with the number of stitches that are on the needle. So I don't want to go back and increase that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to knit my 2 inches of twisted rib, and then I'm going to basically do a folded over rib like what I did with the collar. So I'm not going to knit the twisted rib double, because twisted rib is just, I can't get in a rhythm with twisted rib, so I don't want to do 4 inches of it. But I'm going to knit it, and then I'm going to probably knit the twisted rib part a little longer than 2 inches, and then just knit a bunch of stockinette and fold the ribbing under. So it'll be a double thick ribbing, but it won't be as double thick as this ribbing. I hope that makes sense. So my vision is that it will be folded over and it will have the stretch, but it won't be as thick as the collar. Hope that makes sense. But I'm anticipating that this will give it enough give and stretch that I can get it over all of me without having to worry about the cast off. If you have been a longtime viewer, you will know that I had a tragedy with a 1x1 twisted rib cast off, and I think I have a little bit of PTSD from that, and I'm not emotionally prepared to go through that again, especially with this sweater because I love it so much. So that is going to be my little cheat for this sweater. So I anticipate that I will be finished with the ribbing in the next couple of days. It's on very tiny needles, and it is 1x1 twisted rib, so it is kind of tedious to do, but it's turning out beautifully. And I had put in a lifeline before I did the decreases just to see how I would feel about them, to see how they would look and things like that. But I think I'm ready to take that lifeline out, but we will see. So this is my Foxthoughts sweater. I don't think I said who it was by. It's by Hiroko Payne, and it's in issue 35. issue 35 of Pom Pom magazine. It is a beautiful pattern. It's beautifully written and it knits up so beautifully. I am very tempted to make this in the cardigan form, but I don't know. I just really loved the color work, and I said this on the last episode, but these are 2 strands of lace weight held double. So you're marling all through this color work chart, and it's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. And I've seen people on Ravelry that have created their own color palettes, and I just don't have the color sense to do that, because you are marling and fading and going in and out. And I know that the kit from Bien Aimee is very expensive. It's definitely an investment, but I'm not creative enough to have come up with this color palette on my own. So my hat's off to anybody who has knit this pattern and created their own color palette, because it is insane. It's insane in the most amazing creative way. The other thing that I did for the body is I did do the body with helical knitting. I don't think that's really necessary. And maybe that's just for me because I'm still on my original skeins. So it would have been fine, but I did it helically anyway, and it worked out great. So just really quickly about the yarn. Let me see. So the body, like I said before, is in the color Undergrowth. It is Bien Aimee's Helix. There we go. Helix yarn. And Helix is 75% Falkland and 25% Gotland. And then, like I said before, it's a lace weight, but you hold it double. And then the color work is a mix of Helix and Felix. So these are my leftovers. I have a ton of leftovers. I'm trying to see. Okay, so Felix is Falkland and Corrie. They're both lace weight yarns, and like I said before, you just hold them double while you work through the color work chart and then throughout the body of the sweater. So it's a lace weight held double, so it's a fingering weight sweater. What I have seen people do, if you want to knit the sweater and don't want to make the investment in both of the yarns, I have seen people do, I can't think of the yarn, but they did a fingering weight for the body and then they just bought the kit. So that's an option too if you want to do this sweater but want to save a little bit of money on it. But I love this sweater. I'm so excited to have it done, and I think it's going to be absolutely fabulous when it's finished, even with all of my modifications and bad knitting math. And this is living in a pleisture pouch, another one, a different one in lavender that I bought for my birthday. So that probably would be done by now, but I took a little bit of a break from that sweater to start working on a test knit for a designer whose work I absolutely admire. I'm obsessed with their work, and I actually had a project from them on my to knit list for 2022. And when they reached out to me and asked me if I would want to test knit their upcoming project, I was like, absolutely, yes. And then when they told me the yarn that it was knit in, I was like, it's a match made in heaven. So I'm not able to share a lot of details about the project itself. I can say that it is a garment. At least I think I can say that. It's a garment, but I'm not able to really give very many other details about it, but I can talk about the yarn. So like I said, when they reached out to me and asked me to do the test knit, I was so excited because I absolutely love this designer and the work that they do is stunning. It's amazing. And when she told me what yarn it was knit in, I was like, yes, so many yeses. And the yarn that it's knit in is Bien Aimee's Corrie worsted. Sorry, there we go, the Corrie worsted. And the color I'm doing is Kitsune. And I think, yeah, this is an accurate read of the color. I don't want it to blow out from the light. Okay, so I'm knitting it in the color Kitsune, which is this really pretty bright, not bright, really pretty deep rusted red color. To me, Kitsune is a red. Other people might read it as a brown, but I read it as a red. And it reminds me of one of the colors that I got from the Cocoa collection from Treehouse Knits. It really reminds me of that. And Corrie worsted is 75% Falkland, Corriedale, and 25% Gotland. So it is a rustic, tactile yarn, but it's very, very soft. And I was reflecting on my knits from 2021, and I realized that I didn't knit a single garment in superwash merino, and that wasn't intentional. I don't think I've actually ever knit a garment in superwash. All of my garments have been some sort of rustic wool, and I really actually like that. I like superwash. I have a lot of superwash in my stash. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. But I've just found myself drawn to patterns and garments that are utilizing non-superwash wool. And the Corrie worsted is stunning. It's so soft. It's so bouncy. I'm going to see if I can do this like real. There we go. So you can see the roundness, hopefully, of the plies of the yarn. And it knits like a dream. It's so soft in the hands. It is a rustic or tactile. I call them tactile. It is a tactile yarn. It's not going to feel like a superwash. It feels very different, but it's not rough. It's not harsh. It's not itchy. It's not scratchy. And it knits up beautifully. I have had to rip out this project a couple of times, and the yarn has held up really, really, really well. So if you've been thinking about trying the Corrie worsted, I definitely recommend this yarn. I actually have 2 other sweaters quantity of this yarn. I bought the Corrie confetti. I bought the gray bow color, and I think on a previous episode I shared that I had purchased the ochre color in this as well. And I think the confetti ones are a little bit softer just because they do have like mill ends and recycled fibers mixed in, and that does kind of change the texture. Like the Corrie confetti feels a little bit softer than the just Corrie worsted on its own, but I absolutely love this yarn and I highly recommend it. I picked mine up from my local yarn shop, which is Looped Yarn Works here in DC. But I know that you can purchase it online, and they do sell it at other local yarn shops. So I definitely recommend checking it out if it's something that you've been interested in. I hope that I'll be able to share more details about the actual project soon. There's not a release date, so this has actually been a very relaxing test knit, but when I'm able to share more about this particular project, I will talk all about the test knit experience and everything that kind of went into that and those sorts of details when I'm able to talk more about the project, because it feels kind of weird to talk about it without being able to show you what I'm working on. I will say it is stunning. You are going to want to make it. It's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. So those are the projects that I have been working on for the last couple of months since my last episode. I was working really heavily on the Foxthoughts, and then for the past 3 weeks or so, I've been working on the test knit a lot. So I have a little bit of a routine and a balance going of when I work on each of those projects, but they have been sustaining me. One is a lot more complicated than the other one, and so I have a good mix of those. So one thing that I wanted to do is, I've seen a lot of podcasters doing this, and I think it's really, really awesome, is to talk about my knitting and crafting goals for 2022. I'm going to give a couple of caveats before I share what my knitting goals are, and just kind of share my philosophy that I used when I was coming up with my goals. So I've talked about this on the podcast before, but I am attracted to projects where I can have a really great experience knitting it and then a really great experience wearing it. But what I have found is that I don't just want the everyday, easy, simple knitted items. I don't think there's anything wrong with those types of projects. I think they're beautiful and they definitely have their place in the knitting world. But I don't only want to do, raglan sweaters, or I don't only want to do drop sleeve you know, stockinette sweaters. I want to do things that have texture and color and are interesting and are things that when people see them, they say, oh, that's beautiful. They don't necessarily assume that it's hand knit, but it doesn't look like something you can just go to any store and pick up and purchase. I want to be able to, I don't know, for me, I just feel really impressed by the more complex and complicated projects. That's not to say that you will never see me knit a plain raglan stockinette sweater. I have plans to do that this year. But what I'm saying is I don't want that to be the entirety of what I work on. And so what I realized, I've been watching a lot of what I knit in 2021 videos, and now I'm second guessing myself. Did I say my 2021 goals or 2022? If I said 2021 before, I mean 2022 goals. I don't remember what I said. Anyway, I've been watching a lot of 2021, what I knit this year recaps, and there's this like pressure to be a production knitter in the knitting sphere of people who are podcasters and share their knitting publicly. And I've talked about this pressure before, but I am trying to not allow myself to feel overwhelmed or feel pressured into saying like, I knit 30 sweaters this year, or I knit 20 sweaters. Like, that's so impressive, but I knit very fast, but I don't know that I'm capable of like that level of production of knitting. And I'm so impressed by those knitters and like jealous that they can knit that much, but I don't know. I don't know. So I know that people have like number goals, or they want to knit a certain number of sweaters or a certain number of items or things like that. That's not what you're going to see in these goals. I'm not doing a make 9. I know that's really popular in the making community. I don't want to limit myself to just 9 items. And I know that when you do a make 9, you're not saying you're only going to knit those 9 items, but I want to be able to have the freedom and the creativity to knit what speaks to me in the moment and not sort of tie myself to those 9 items. And I know me, I'm a list maker. I like to check things off. If I write down that I'm going to make these 9 items, then I am going to be fixated on making those 9 things. So instead of doing that, I have sort of created these goals that are a little bit more like criteria for what I want to think about when I'm picking out projects. And I think it's going to help me really create projects that are stunning and meaningful and beautiful, but also that I enjoy making. And I think it's going to be really interesting to reflect back at the end of this year and just see what I made based on these criteria. So I wrote them down. So if you see me looking down, it's because I'm reading from my notes. Okay. So for 2022, I have 2 sort of categories of goals or criteria goals, whatever, that I'm using to help me decide what projects I'm going to be working on. The first category is to be intentional. So this is sort of a word that I'm carrying with me through other aspects of my life, not just in knitting and crafting and making, but in relationship to my making goals. I want to spend more time knitting from my stash. I by no means have a desire to knit my entire stash or to only knit from stash this year, but I do have really, really beautiful yarns that I have purchased over the last few years, and I find myself being in the habit of purchasing yarn and then purchasing yarn for projects and not really thinking about the yarn that I purchase as yarn for projects. So even though I have a sweater's quantity of Corrie worsted confetti, to me, this is not yarn for a project. And I need to break myself of that mentality. One, it's an expensive mentality to have, but also this yarn is just as beautiful in the skein as it is knit up. And I think I will get just as much enjoyment knitting it and wearing it as I did from purchasing it. So I want to be more intentional and knit from stash. That doesn't mean that I'm only going to knit from stash, but I want to start pulling from my stash a lot more because those yarns are really beautiful and they do deserve to be utilized in really fantastic projects. keeping in line with that, the next thing that I want to do is purchase yarn with projects in mind. Again, I'm not saying that I will never just like purchase a yarn that is pretty for the sake of it being pretty, but I want to start thinking about what I'm going to make with this yarn before I purchase it, and really having a plan for the yarn that I purchase. I have fallen into the habit of just buying yarn and not really thinking through what I'm going to use it for or what I want it to eventually become. And I want to be more intentional with that. Even if I don't ultimately make that item, I want it to be in the forefront of my mind when I purchase the yarn, that this is going to be for, you know, a raglan sweater, or even more specifically a pattern, and just say like, I want to make X top or X whatever with this yarn, and purchase with that intention. The next thing I want to do is to try new dyers and designers and makers. I have fallen into the habit of buying from the same yarn dyers over and over and over again. And I don't think there's anything wrong with having a favorite. It is no secret, I love Bien Aimee. I love Lola Bean Yarn Co. I love Neighborhood Fiber Company. I love Magpie Fibers. But there are so many other incredibly talented dyers and pattern makers, and I want to explore a lot more of that. I actually have a few stash enhancements that I'm going to show you, and it's just been really fun exploring new dyers, and doing that has inspired me to also branch out and think about new designers. I, like many people, love certain pattern designers, and I'm drawn to their patterns because I understand them and I trust the way that they write, but there are so many talented designers out there, and I don't want to just only knit in a bubble. I want to really expand that. And so I'm really, even in planning out some of my projects for the first part of the year, I've just really been thinking about who are designers that I haven't tried before, but I've been curious about. What are some yarns that I really want to try? And I'm saying yarn dyers, I'm not even only talking about indie hand-dyed yarns. You will see when I show you some of my plans that there are just some other yarns that I haven't tried before that I'm really excited to try, just to be able to try them and to be able to experiment and play with those other yarns and see what they do, so that I'm not always picking yarns from the same designer, from the same dyers that are the same, you know, sort of fiber content and things like that, that I'm really expanding out. And the last part of that is to just make things that I love. I've talked about this before, but I really want to make, you know, items and projects that I love knitting and that I love wearing, and not just one or the other. I want the experience of knitting items to be just as meaningful as the experience of wearing an item and being able to say like, I made this from a piece of string. Like, it literally started out as string and I turned it into this. And so I want to make more things that I love and be thoughtful about the modifications that I'm making to projects. If I'm knitting something, you know, that's popular, what about it do I like? What about it am I drawn to? And are there changes that I need to make in order to make it something that I'm actually gonna really love wearing in the long run? So that's category A, intentionality. The other part is to be creative. So if I'm talking to my non-knitting, non-making friends, they're like, you're so creative. And on one hand, yes, but I think about knitting kind of the same way that I think about baking and cooking. I can follow a recipe. If you give me a cookbook, you give me a recipe, you give me the ingredients, I can get from point A to point C very easily. I think of creativity as the stuff that happens in between. And so I can knit and I can make things, but I don't always feel the most creative in that process. And so one of the things that I want to do to be more creative is to explore color. I wear a lot of denim, black, white, gray, earth tones. I'm not really a color person. I love color. I'm drawn to color, but I don't really wear it a lot and I don't really purchase it a lot. And so I want to start exploring color in my knitting. And I was watching a knitting podcast. I watch a ton of different podcasts, so I apologize if I can't remember who to attribute this to, but someone was picking out colors for a colorwork sweater. And they said, when you're working on a project, pick at least one color that scares you. And that just resonated with me. And so I'm going to start picking colors that scare me in 2022. And I don't mean that in like it's gonna turn into wild and crazy kids. But shout out to people who caught the reference. But I do want to explore color more. There are colors that I love. I love neons. I've talked about this before. I love neons. I love purple, but I don't gravitate towards those when I buy yarn. I gravitate towards, you know, the Kitsune or the undyed colors or sort of safe, neutral colors. And I want to break out of that. I want to explore color. So one thing I'm going to aim to do is I'm going to aim to knit the rainbow this year. And I thought about making this into a knit along, but I don't know that I could manage a knit along, let alone a year-long knit along. I'm gonna think about it. I might end up doing that, but I wanna knit the rainbow. I literally am just going to go through and check off that I've knit, you know, Roy G. Biv. And it doesn't have to be a literal interpretation of the rainbow, like primary colors. It can be shades and tones, but I want to incorporate the rainbow into my knitting. And not all in one project, but throughout the projects. Hope that makes sense. The next thing that I want to explore creatively is texture. I have done some texture play, but I haven't done a lot of it. And so this year I want to knit cables and brioche and baubles and lace. I want to look for those things in the projects that I'm knitting. I also want to do things like holding yarns double, playing with mohair, playing with thick and thin, just exploring the way that knitting can have so much movement and texture. I have gotten really complacent with like plain stockinette in the round, and I want to see more of that. I've knit a little bit of brioche, I've knit a little bit of cables, I've knit lace, I haven't knit baubles, but I've done those things, but not with the most intentionality. So I'm gonna be intentional about being creative with these things. The next thing I wanna do is I wanna crochet more. I actually came into fiber arts through crochet. I was a crocheter before I was a knitter, and I quickly threw crochet to the wayside, but there are so many beautiful crochet patterns, and I want to look for patterns that mix crochet with knitting. I love when crochet and knitting are blended together into projects. I don't see it a ton, but I'm hoping to find some really amazing projects that are at that intersection of knitting and crochet to be able to do both of those things, but I want to crochet more. And the last thing is that I want to, the last thing is that I want to sew more. I talked about this a little bit before in a different episode, but my mother taught me how to sew in 2020. She bought me an amazing sewing machine. I did a little bit of playing around with it in 2021, but not a ton. And so I want to use sewing a lot more. I don't have like a number goal, but I do want to try to sit down and sew at least once a month. That doesn't necessarily mean that I will finish a garment every month, but that I want to sit down and spend time with my sewing machine at least one time a month. So I'm going to be doing a lot more sewing as well. I don't know if I'm going to share that on this channel. If that's something that people are interested in, I definitely can. But I am by no means a sewist. I am very novice, very, very beginner. So I don't know that I would have a lot to share in terms of sewing, but I do plan on doing more of that in 2022. So those are my goals for the upcoming year. And with that in mind, I want to share a few projects that I am planning to start, that I have the yarn for, and I'm ready to cast on. So when I finish my Foxthoughts sweater, the next sweater that I'm going to cast on, and I think I talked about this on the last episode. I should probably go back and watch previous episodes before I film, especially because I take so long between filming, but I think I talked about this. But I'm positive that I shared this yarn. So this is from Treehouse Knits. This is Alabrije. This is from her Cocoa collection. And I have it in the 80-20 base. So this is a superwash merino and nylon. And then I have it in the Surrey lace, which is baby alpaca and silk. I think I have enough of this to make the Magnolia Bloom cardigan by Camilla Vlad. So that is going to be my next project, next sweater project. When I get to the sleeves, I'm going to wind this up and do a swatch and see. What I'm thinking about doing is cropping the sweater, just because I'm not 100% positive that I have enough yarn to do it the full length. But I think I have enough if I crop it. So I think what I will ultimately do is I'm going to swatch, and then I'm going to cast on, finish the yoke, do the sleeves to the length I want, and then knit the body until I run out of yarn. That is my plan for this. But this yarn is going to be a Magnolia Bloom, and that is going to check off a lot of boxes. It's not like a one-time thing, like, oh, I knit lace, I'm done. But the Magnolia Bloom, if you haven't seen it before, it's lace, it's baubles, it's mohair, it's all the things. So I think this is going to be a really pretty version of that sweater. And at the same time, I think I'm going to cast on, let me see if I can find a picture of it. I don't have. Okay, I thought I had a printed out version of the pattern, but I don't think I do. But I'm going to do the Lune shawl by Natasha Hornby at Moonstruck Knits. I love that shawl. It incorporates like mosaic knitting, and I think there's like some texture play going on. And so I originally bought the colors from the pattern, which are these 3 colors. So a gray, a cream, and a white. The gray and cream are Snaeldan. I hope I'm saying that correctly. They're Snaeldan yarn. And I can't read the label, but it's from the Faroe Islands. And it's pure new wool. It is very, very tactile. This is rustic. And then this Hillesvåg, I know I'm mispronouncing this, yarn, and this really pretty blue color. I think it's called marine blue. And I was like, okay, this is going to be really fun, but this is playing it kind of safe. So I'm going to also incorporate this neon green color. The color is called Cosmic Yellow. It's from Purl Soho. It's their line weight. It's 100% merino. It is a light fingering, so I might have to hold it double, but I think it should be fine. I'll see when I get to it. But if you've seen the Lunea shawl, I think it's Lunea shawl, there are a couple of places where I'm going to just incorporate a little pop of this color. And I think that this color palette is gorgeous. And I think it's going to make a really fun shawl without being too overboard. So there will just be a little bit of this lime green that runs throughout, but I'm really excited to see this shawl knit up and play together. So I think when I get a little bit further along in my test knit, I'm going to cast this on, or I might cast it on at the same time as the Magnolia Bloom. I'm not really sure. I do have a little bit of cast on-itis, but I'm also a fairly monogamous knitter, so I actually get very overwhelmed if I have too many whips, and 3 is pushing it for me. So I need to get a couple of things off of my needles before I put a bunch of things on my needles. But yeah, I think that these will definitely be cast on in the next couple of weeks, and I'm really excited about that. So those are my plans. Oh, I have one more plan. So I have been really kind of obsessed with like Japanese and Asian designers. And I was exploring the hashtag for this sweater, and I saw that somebody who had knit this sweater had also knit this sweater. It's called the Akimi, and it was in this issue of Amirisu, which is a Japanese knitting magazine. And so I went and I found the magazine because you couldn't buy the pattern solo. I think you could do a digital download, but I'm a bibliophile. I like books. I like paper. So I wanted the actual paper copy of this. And so I purchased it for this pattern. And I'm obsessed with this pattern. And at first I was going to do it in a cream color because I lack color confidence. But I think I'm going to do it in the actual color. I think I'm going to do it in this orange color. I think that it's going to be so stunning and so pretty. And two of my universities have orange as a primary color of their school colors. So I think it will be only fitting to have an orange sweater. So I'm not going to order the yarn for this project yet. I'll probably order it when I get a little bit further along in my Magnolia Bloom. But after Magnolia Bloom, this will be my next sweater. So I'm really excited about that. And that has a lot of texture. It's almost like a sampler. It's got ribbons and cables and bobbles and fringe and lacy when I was reading through the pattern, I was like, oh, this is like a little knitting sampler, and I'm really excited about it. So I haven't ordered the yarn yet, but this is also in my lineup. So next will be Magnolia Bloom, and then I will be starting on the Akimi sweater. So I'm really excited about that. So I have a couple of, if you're still here, thank you. I feel like I've been talking forever. So if you're still hanging around, I appreciate it. I'm almost done, I promise. So I want to share a couple of acquisitions that I've picked up over the last couple of months since the last episode. And I'm going to start with books. So I've actually picked up quite a few knitting books. First and foremost, I picked up the Vogue Knitting with Michelle Obama on the cover, and the interview was so cute. It wasn't very, very long, but it was, and I'm trying to remember if the little girl who interviewed Michelle Obama, I think is like 12 or 13. And it was just such a cute little interview, and they were just talking about knitting and what they've knit and what they like to knit, and it was so adorable and so sweet. And then I looked through a lot of the patterns in here, and there are some really awesome patterns in this Vogue Knitting. Like this cabled sweater. That's stunning. I don't know that I would make it. There's a lot of, I think the theme for this one was like bugs or something. I don't like outdoor creatures. Bugs are not my thing. But there's like some intarsia. I think this vest is really pretty. Really pretty. I would crop it. And it looks crochet. Oh, it is. It's really pretty. So, like this is beetle inspired, but it's still really, really pretty. So I picked up a copy of this. I found mine at Joann Fabric. So if you're looking for it, I would check out Joann Fabric. You can also order it on Vogue Knitting, but I picked up that. I was very excited to get my hands on a copy of that. I also picked up, while I was at Joann, I didn't realize that Joann sold Pom Pom magazine. So if you don't live near a yarn shop and you want to check out an issue of Pom Pom, I would look at Joann. I was able to pick up this edition of Pom Pom, and this is number 38. And I had looked at this issue, but decided not to pick it up when it first came out. I don't remember why, but it has some beautiful cabled patterns. And I think maybe I was just, when I picked it up, I was in the mood for cables. So it has this cardigan that I really like. That's cabled. and they did it in like a cropped and a longer version. So it's got some really beautiful patterns. This one you can't really see. I would probably do it in a lighter color, but it's got this beautiful cabled yoke. And I would do it in a lighter color so you could see the cables more. But it's beautiful, beautiful. So I picked up issue 38 of Pom Pom, also at Joann. Then at my local yarn shop, I picked up issue 39, the Rhythm issue of Pom Pom. I think I might just get a subscription to Pom Pom. On the whole, I find that I really do enjoy Pom Pom, but I don't subscribe to it. So maybe I'll do that. Anyway, the Rhythm issue of Pom Pom is probably the best issue of Pom Pom I've seen in a very, very, very long time. Pun intended. Every single pattern in this issue is a bop. Like every single one. I'm going to show you really quickly. So you've got Wave Table. You've got the Rockamore cardigan. I will definitely be making that. The texture on that, stunning. You've got Polyrhythm. As you can see, that is bookmarked. I will be making that. Pink Noise. Love that. And I think Polyrhythm and Pink Noise are made with fairly affordable yarn. Pink Noise is made with Purl Soho worsted twist. And Polyrhythm is made with Barocco Ultra Wool. This cardigan, this brioche cardigan, stunning. This pattern, it's called Semitone, stunning. And I didn't even show you all of the patterns. The patterns are beautiful, especially if you're into cables or color work or texture. These are really, really beautiful patterns. I wouldn't say that they're easy, but they're beautiful. So I'm really excited that I was able to pick up a copy of this. I am going to be knitting out of this magazine. Maybe not this year. Don't hold me to all of that. But I will be picking up some patterns out of this. And I definitely want to make either Pink Noise or Polyrhythm this year. I loved both of those patterns immediately when I saw them and knew that I had to have this issue of Pom Pom for those patterns. The other two like purely knitting related books that I picked up are Worsted by Amy from Bien Aimee. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful book. I love the yellow. It's like Bien Aimee yellow. The cover is that beautiful textured kind of linen that Lina magazine is known for their publications. And the patterns in here are stunning. Stunning patterns. I don't know that I will make every pattern. I don't know that I will all my words are escaping me. Anyway, I don't know that I'm going to make every pattern, but all of them are beautiful to look at. She's got cardigans and pullovers and accessories, and it's just a stunning publication. There are a couple of patterns in here that I do really want to make this year. I don't know if I will. I don't want to overwhelm myself by having like all these things that I want to make and then I'm not able to make, but the patterns in here are stunning. And when I look at pattern books, I try to think about like a lifetime of knitting. So even if I'm not immediately attracted to something right now, I just think about all the ways that my style has changed over the years. And so this is a book where I look at things and I'm like, I don't necessarily see myself wearing that today, but who knows, in like 5 years I might want to knit it. So we'll see. But this has a good combination of patterns that are wearable plus patterns that look like they would be really fun to knit. And that's really important to me, as I've stated probably 10,000 times on this episode. The last book that I picked up is Knitting for Radical Self-Care by Brandy Cheyenne Harper. If you don't follow Brandy Cheyenne Harper on Instagram, first of all, you're missing out. Her aesthetic is beautiful, and everything on that feed is so beautiful. it's my understanding that they used to work for Purl Soho or design for Purl Soho. So there are definitely patterns that available on Purl Soho if you want to see how you feel before investing in an entire book. But I think this book is worth the money. So you can purchase it on Amazon. I think you can maybe purchase it from local yarn shops. I picked up mine from Amazon. But I didn't know what the book was about when I purchased it. I just knew that I loved Brandy Cheyenne Harper so much that I wanted the book. So when I got it, I was actually pleasantly surprised at what it was. So it is actually a book about the effects of knitting and like knitting as self-care, which is something that I'm extremely passionate about and love to kind of think about and talk about. And it's also a like how to knit book. So this would make actually an amazing gift for someone who is really interested in knitting, because you could pick up this book, a couple of needles and some yarn, and this book would walk them through knitting. So it teaches you how to cast on, how to bind off, how to read patterns, how to gauge, swatch, how to cable, how to do I-cord. Like it just goes through so many different things. And then in the back, it teaches, there's a bunch of different patterns. I didn't even count how many patterns there are in this book. Let me see. So there are 10 patterns in the back of the book. Let me see if I can show one without giving away too much. So there's some cowls, a beautiful jacket that I definitely want to make, a shawl. I can't really show these, so I will link to her Instagram. I don't want to show them because it's also on the page with the pattern. There's gloves. So, and most everything is bulky weight. It looks like everything is pretty much bulky weight. Yeah, everything is bulky weight. So this is really good for beginners, or if you're just in the mood, if you're an experienced knitter and you want to get something on and off of your needles really, really quickly, I think these patterns would be really good for that. I am excited to try to cast on some of these projects. I don't know when I'll get around to them. Like I said, I can't think beyond the projects that I have yarn for, but this is a really, really amazing book. And I'm really glad that I was able to snag a copy of this because it's stunning and I love it. So the last knitting type book that I picked up, I saw Dana from Yards of Happiness, I think is the name of her blog. I always think of her Instagram handle, which is Call Me DWJ, but I think her blog is called Yards of Happiness. And she was talking about this book, and I'm a nerd. I'm a self-proclaimed nerd. And so I like anthology type books. And so this book is called This Long Thread, Women of Color on Craft, Community, and Connection. And it's by Jen Hewitt. The cover is beautiful. Also, I apologize if you can hear my neighbors. They like to play their music really obnoxiously loudly all the time. So if you can hear that, I apologize. If you can't hear it, then you just heard me rant about my neighbors for no reason. Anyway, this book is an anthology of, of interviews, and I think it's mostly interviews. I haven't gotten very far in the book. I've read a couple of the interviews, but I think it's all interviews. There are a few essays, I believe, but it's just women of color talking about their experiences in crafting, not just knitting, and not just crochet, but through all fiber arts. So I'm actually gonna read the description on the back because I am not doing a good job with my words right now. So it says, weaving together interviews, first-person essays, and artist profiles, This Long Thread explores the work and contributions of women of color across the fiber arts and crafts community. These conversations explore materials, belonging, identity, cultural misappropriation, privilege, the value or undervaluing of craft, community support structures, recognition and exclusion, intergenerational dialogue, and much more. Be inspired by the work and stories of innovative people of color who are making exceptional contributions to the world of craft. The textile artists featured include knitters, quilters, sewers, weavers, and more who are making inspiring and innovative work. And that is the summary by Jen Hewitt, who herself is a printmaker, surface designer, and textile artist from New York. So I will link to this as well. She's thick, but it's digestible because it's, you know, chapters are sometimes only a couple of pages long. So it's easy to just read a little bit and put it down without feeling like you're losing your space. So if you're interested in crafting and women of color and the community and things like that, this is a really great book to pick up. Okay, that's books. I'm still here. This is going to be a really long episode. I might break this episode into 2 episodes. I probably won't, but it's a really long episode. I apologize. Thank you if you're still here. A few last acquisitions, and then I'm going to be out of here, and I will let you go on your way. I've taken up so much of your time. Okay. Also, sorry for the crinkling. I'm sorry. I'm so distracted by how loud my neighbor's music is. It's ridiculous. Okay. So I mentioned before that I really love just thinking about knitting as self-care and kind of ruminating on that. And a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago now. What is time? I have no concept of time. I was asked by Kinsey and Kara at the Knit Two Together podcast if I would be on an episode of their podcast with Macy from Little Miss Knits. All of these things will be linked below. And we had an amazing conversation about knitting as self-care, and I will link the episode below. It was so good. Their podcast is amazing. If you have not heard about it or checked it out, please go check it out. It's so good. And they talk about a variety of different topics. It's not a traditional knitting podcast where it's like, look at my whips, look at my acquisitions. They are talking about topics and issues within the knitting community. They have things about designing and making knitting and social media your full-time job, and like how they've grown their sphere of influence, and just a wide array of topics. So it's a really, really great podcast. It's very different than a lot of the other knitting podcasts that are on this platform. And so I highly recommend you check it out. Anyway, I was on that podcast, and Kara from the Kinetic Knitter was so gracious to send me some yarn. So she dyed up for me. This is not like a custom color. This is a color that she carries, but it's called Storm. It is beautiful. I've said before, I love purple. This purple is beautiful. It's so beautiful. It is a lavender, but I think it's a pretty neutral lavender. It doesn't lean blue or icy, and it doesn't lean super like red. It's beautiful. I don't know what I'm going to make with it, but it's beautiful. And this is a single. It's a single ply. Well, it's not a single ply. It is 100% superwash merino. It's a 4-ply, but it's not a blend. So this is not sock yarn. I will make this into a garment of some sorts. I think based on the yardage, I have enough to make a sweater. It would have to be maybe a little cropped or fitted, but I think it will be really, really beautiful. So I'm excited. I was actually messaging her a couple days ago, maybe last week, about a color that I saw that she posted that just looked like summer in a skein. It was like brights and neons and so much fun. So I, in being true to my intentionality for this year, told her I will follow back up with you. I want that yarn. I want it, but I'm going to come to it once I know what I want it to be. But you will be seeing more of the Kinetic Knitter. Kara's color sense is stunning. So check out the Kinetic Knitter if you haven't purchased from her shop before. It's beautiful, and she's an incredibly sweet human being. So I picked up that yarn. I also wanted to share really quickly. I had 3 advent calendars this year, and I don't know that I will do that again. It was a lot, for a lot of different reasons, but I did a stitch marker advent from Firefly Notes. I did a celestial calendar from Magpie Fiber, so that one wasn't every day, it was certain days. It was following like the lunar calendar for December. And then I picked up the Kwanzaa advent, and I think I kind of talked about this, but not in depth, on a previous episode. So the Kwanzaa advent was from Passion Knits Yarn, and it was a soulful Kwanzaa advent that was inspired by soul music of the 60s and 70s. And I did not realize when I purchased this advent that the maker is actually fairly local to me. She's out of Maryland, but like close to where I live in DC. And it featured other Black women creators. And I was just really excited to have a Kwanzaa advent because I had never seen anything like that before. My family and I, we don't personally celebrate Kwanzaa, but I do love Kwanzaa and everything that it stands for. So I'll link some information below if you're not familiar with Kwanzaa and what it is and how people celebrate it and the history of the holiday. But the advent was amazing. So it came with this beautiful letter that talks about each of the designers. It had and I don't have it next to me, I don't want to get up, but it had this beautiful folder with graphics and information about the history of Kwanzaa, the themes of Kwanzaa, what each of the days represents, and it was amazing. It also came with a pattern called the Kumba shawl. Kumba means, I believe it's creativity. Don't quote me on that, but I think Kumba is creativity. And that is one of the principles of Kwanzaa. So it's this beautiful shawl pattern. And I believe you can use the yarn that comes in the advent with it. But I wanted to show the yarn because it's so beautiful. And I'd never purchased anything from Passion Knits Yarn. And I will definitely be checking out this dyer in the future. So it came with a ton of yarn. First, it came with these red, black, and green minis. These colors are symbolic to Kwanzaa and the Pan-African flag and other things, which you will learn about when you click on the link below for information about Kwanzaa. But it came with these minis. It came with these minis, which pink is not my color. So I think this is going to go into, I do love this purple though. I might keep that in this purple. But I think the pinks are not really my color scheme. But I have been organizing my stash, and I started a basket of yarn that is for like gift knits. So I think that will be going to a gift knit of some sort. And then it came with these 2 really bright skeins. These are really, I actually love this skein. As like bright, and I don't know that it is. I really love this. I don't know what I'm gonna make out of this, but I think I want to hold it with like a fun mohair maybe to kind of tone it down just a wee bit, but still utilize it. And then this is so pretty. So if you haven't checked out Passion Knits Yarn, you should definitely check them out. Check out her shop. I don't know when she does updates or if she keeps things in stock, but the advent was so worth it. It was so beautiful and so much fun to be able to do that. So I'm not going to go through every advent that I got. Oh, I missed a skein. This was also one. And I love this purple. This is like all the purples that I love. It's like deep purple, light purples, bluey purples. I love purples. So check out Passion Knits Yarn. I will have that shop linked below. 2 more things. I don't even know how to count. My hands are just doing whatever. 2 more things. So Whitney Marie Anderson. I don't know if you've heard of Whitney Marie Anderson. If you haven't, where have you been? If you have, why didn't you tell me sooner? But Whitney Marie Anderson was also featured in the advent calendar, the Kwanzaa advent calendar. And that was one of the reasons why I really wanted to get it, because I have not been able to get any of the things from Whitney Marie Anderson that I wanted to get. And one night I was up on Instagram. I'm not going to say I was doom scrolling, but I wasn't not doom scrolling on Instagram. And I saw this on her feed and I immediately was like, I have to have it. I went on the website. I ordered at like 2 in the morning. Look at these buttons. Hold on. My light is blowing them out. There we go. I am stunned. They were beautiful online. They are stunning in person. It's like gold leaf and pressed flowers, and each one is so unique and different. I ordered 6 because I figured most sweaters or cardigan patterns you would need about 6. So these are actually sold out, but I am going to link to her shop because she has other really fun stitch markers and things like that. And I think she's doing like a Valentine's Advent calendar type of thing. I'm not going to get it because, again, I'm trying to be intentional with my purchases, but I wanted to. I was very, very tempted. It was very affordable, but these buttons are stunning. Stunning. I'm obsessed. I'm obsessed. Can't even. Okay, the last thing that I got. So I am not one to really get into the hype of things. And I just dropped something important. I'm not one to get into the hype of things. I'm not a hype beast kind of person. And so when I saw people kind of talking about this product before, I was like, I don't see the appeal. I went to Fiber Space, which is another local to me yarn shop. I looked at it. I wasn't impressed. Then I saw Macy of Little Miss Knits on Instagram post about this, and I was like, okay. Then I started working on this test knit, and this test knit has a lot going on, and I was like, I need this product. What am I talking about? I'm talking about the Coco Knits Maker's Board, I think is what it's called, Maker's Board. This is the one that is magnetic. And I'm going to, I have some stuff for the pattern for my test knit, so I'm just not going to hold it up really close. So what you do is you can kind of prop it up like this, and it's magnetic. So it comes with these little magnets that can hold like your pattern. So I'm going to cover this up because it's the pattern, but it has my pattern. It has magnetic rulers, so I can use those to keep up with the pattern. And then it has these like other size magnets. So I have right now this is the Coco Knits Stitch Fixer, and now it can just hold right there. I've got a darning needle right there. I had because I had to switch needle tips, so I had the little thing that you use to switch needle tips on there, the little T-pin thing. Okay, let me do this one because I don't need it anymore. I also have these are also from Coco Knits. I really love Coco Knits, if you can't tell. This is the row counter from Coco Knits. It is itself not magnetic, but there are these square magnets that you can stick on the back. Oops. And then it sticks right there. So again, I'm going to cover up the pattern, but you can see everything is kind of magnetized. I have notes. I always get my make ones confused. And so I have just a little sticky note with a magnet with notes about make ones right here. And this board has been a lifesaver. My only criticism is that it's made of, I think, like recycled cardboard or something like that. So it is a little flimsy. I wouldn't travel with this. Fortunately for me, the project I'm working on that I'm utilizing this for the most is not a project that I don't even like to get up when I'm working on this project. Like I work in like a long span and then I'm done because I can't start and stop it. So this isn't super durable, but it's such an amazing like ecosystem because you can just kind of buy magnets and other things, and it just makes following, especially if you're following things that are charted, so much easier. I mean, it's kind of gimmicky, but I have really, really enjoyed it, and it has been worth the investment to me. When you purchase it, it does not come with the rulers. The rulers were a separate like add-on. But this one is a needle gauge. And then this one is just a regular ruler. I don't use either one of them for those things, but what I have found is that they make great rulers to like mark where you are in the pattern if you're doing stitch repeats. And then it all closes up, and what I love is that, again, it's magnetic, so I can magnetize even the pattern in here and then open it up, set myself up, knit from it, and it's amazing. Not inexpensive for what it is, but not super expensive. So I will link it below if it's something that you're interested in and want to check out. So this has been an incredibly long episode. I don't know how long it's going to be. I'm lying. I can see the time at the top. It's a really long episode. So if you made it to the end, which I'm sure many of you did not, but for those of you who did make it to the end, thank you so much for tuning in and for watching and for spending some time with me, even if you had to do it over the span of a couple days because the video is so long. But I really appreciate everyone who takes the time to watch my videos, to comment, to share them, to subscribe to my channel. All of that means the world to me. It truly, truly does. And I'm so grateful and appreciative. When I started this podcast a year ago, I thought that I would be the only person who watched my videos. I had no idea that over 1,500 people would be subscribed to my channel. That still blows my mind. And, you know, in the last year, just how much I've been able to really integrate into the knitting community that I once felt so separated from, just by having this podcast and having this channel and sharing a little bit about what I'm working on and sharing it on Instagram. Like, all of it has really touched my heart, and I'm really, really grateful and appreciative for that. So thank you so much for taking the time to watch this. I would love to hear from you below. What are some knitting goals that you have for this year? If it's a project that you want to work on, if it's a skill that you want to build, if it's a yarn that you want to be able to utilize in a project, I want to hear all about that. I'm so inspired by the things that people share below, and I don't know, I just would love to hear from you about what you're working on and what you want to work on over the year. So thank you again. And if you did enjoy this video, I hope that you will take time to subscribe to my channel, click the notification bell, because I don't really have a regular upload schedule. I'm going to try to be a little bit better about that, but I don't want to put that pressure on myself. So I film and upload when I have the energy to film and can get everything to be the way that I would like it to be for sharing. So because of that, subscribing and clicking on the notification bell will help to alert you when I have new videos up. And you can also follow me over on Instagram if you want a little bit more regular updates on the things that I'm working on and the yarn that I'm buying and things like that. So yeah, I don't think I have anything else to say. Thank you so, so much for watching. I will see you the next time. Bye.